Hey nerds, how's it going? It's me, Danny, and welcome back to Comics. And today I have a bit of a treat for you guys. I haven't done an interview in a while, but guess who I ran into? You may recognize him from things like Stargate SG-1 and one of my personal favorites, Parker Lewis Can't Lose. Today we are talking to Corin Nemec. I'm
Okay.
I'm gonna allow myself like a whole 5 seconds to be a total spaz because this is very exciting for me. Congratulations, you're the first person in the industry to come on my show that I had a Teen Beat poster of on my wall as a young
That's
lady.
funny.
So super cool. I had
My pleasure.
I really loved Parker Lewis when I was a kid. So this is cool.
Well, I loved it too. I had an incredible time on that show. It was a
Yeah.
fantastic show to work on. I can tell you that.
Well, all of St. Louis was super, super proud of Abraham. His father is a legend in St. Louis, Missouri. There's a radio station,
Yeah.
K
The
K
radio show
ninety
host.
five Smash.
Yeah,
He was
it's
very
great.
proud of his son. He talked about him a lot. So all of St. Louis was like, "Yes, it's one of us."
The-
So
Yeah, I know. It's so cool. It is awesome when you see somebody from the hometown make it.
especially when St. Louis isn't really that small, but the rest of the world thinks it is because Hollywood portrays us as nothing but cows every time you see it. So we don't get a whole lot of love except for when Nellie has something to say, I assume. So but we birthed John Hamm too, and Jenna Fisher and James Gunn, so that's us,
Hey, there you
man.
go.
We have one Stanley Cup and we're damn proud of it. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it
Thank
was
you
a
so
long
much.
journey to get here, but we made it.
We made it. We made it. My grandmother lives in Florida and she wanted me to tell you you can come visit whenever you want. It's you just come visit her.
Does she live in the villages?
She does. She does. She has lived there since there was only 10,000 people living there in 1998. So
Only 10,000.
yeah.
I have an uncle and aunt that live there, and they love it. They absolutely love
Well, I won't tell her that because she'll try to track them down and have lunch. And
it.
but every time
They
I
would
tell
love it. They
her,
would enjoy that, actually.
ugh, well, I'll let her know then because every time I tell her I'm talking to someone who lives in Florida, she's like, "Where do they live? You tell them to come visit. You tell them they come by anytime." Because people are just dying to go see my grandmother. She's
Nice.
in her defense, she's super cool. She worked in intelligence for like 40 years.
Oh,
We had
far out. It must be a very interesting conversation.
we had no idea that she did that stuff, none whatsoever until I was in my late 30s because she signed a paper. She gave her word to her government that she wouldn't breathe a word about it, and by God, she kept that. We just thought she was a secretary. Like, hell no.
Far out. Yeah, my grandfather was he was in the counterintelligence corps all throughout the Cold War, and he went to the grave with most of his secrets because I mean we tried to milk him for
Oh, I've
everything we
tried
could
so
because
many
he knew
times.
so much stuff that was going on. He told us some interesting stories, you know. So and I have a copy of his military record and all of that stuff, but there's some stuff that he just refused to
Oh
ever,
yeah.
talk
During
about. He would not go down those rabbit holes, no matter what. I'm like, dude, it's so many years
it's so
past, nobody
long.
cares anymore. And he did make it to 95 years old, which was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, she's almost 90 herself and she'll say certain things like, "Oh, there was this Russian spy who worked out of a watch shop and they would bring her in as kind of a plant because she looked like a
Yeah.
grandma, like a little old grandma, and they're like, "Oh, she's just here to take notes." And what she was doing was reading body language and your breaths
Oh,
and where your
interesting.
eyes look and studying
Yeah, lie
handwriting.
detector, a human lie detector.
Yes, she was. She is. This is why I'm a terrible liar. Like, I'm really bad at it because she caught me every time. Your grandfather worked that because that's freaking incredible. That's super cool. We have something in common. That's really neat. But you
Yeah,
you you come from a family of artists, right? Like your parents
I
were
do.
artists.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. My mom was a graphic designer in the music business and theater business for the majority of my life. And then she ended up working at Capitol Records at the near the end of her career in graphic design. And then they started switching over to the computerized graphic design work and all of that. And so she transferred and started doing some management and agenting and stuff like that in the film business. She worked at a voiceover agency for quite a while.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, and my dad was an architect when I was really young, and then ended up getting into the film and TV business in the, I guess, the early '80s. And he quickly rose to the top of his field as a production designer, working on films like The Abyss and Terminator 2 and Patriot
Ooh.
Games and Twister, and he was assistant art director on Goonies as well, and a slew of other films. I mean, he still works to this day. I mean, he's very sought after because he's just so good at what he does.
Well, that had to be a really inspiring childhood, for lack of a better way to put it, that your parents were artists, so they kind of they understood that need to express and create.
Yeah, I was never, I never really got in trouble for, for drawing in class and things like that. And I was very much supported in my, artistic, endeavors, especially when it came to getting into acting, because that's something that I originated on my own that I really wanted to do. When my dad worked on the movie Goonies, when that film came out, that's what was the impetus for me wanting to become an actor at a young age. Because I just saw what I understood. I'd been on sets with my dad that on films he was working on, and I'd been backstage with my mom at concerts and plays and things like that. And I always actually had more of an interest in kind of the design side of things.
Mhm.
Really, I sort of saw myself following in their footsteps, but once the movie Goonies came out, that's when I was like, I have to become an actor, and I have to do it while I'm young, because that just looked like they were having way too much fun in that film. And so when I was in eighth grade in Los Angeles at Walter Reed Junior High, one of my classmates in a graphic design class that I was
Mhm.
taking in school, they actually offered it. Mr. Mendez was our teacher there, and he was amazing. I took graphic design with him from eighth and ninth grade, and my one of the guys in my class was named David Van Gorder, and he was a young actor at the time, and he was most famous at that time for being the lead character in a very famous Van Halen music video called "Hot for Teacher," where he
Ah.
played Waldo, the nerd that had the hots for his teacher.
Mhm.
And I was really inspired by his enthusiasm for acting at that age, and I asked him how how he could maybe help me out to get into acting and stuff like that, because I never really, my parents both supported me and all of that. My mom,
Mhm.
especially, because she was more hands on. But it was really up to me to figure things out. And at a young age, I did. I mean, I did. I mean, he was in an acting class called Center Stage LA at the time that was directed by
Mhm.
the artistic director was Kevin McDermott there, and it was a kids theater and improv class and workshop from ages roughly, I mean, maybe he had some people who might have been 11, 10, 11, possibly the youngest, but mostly it was between the ages of 12 and 17. And so I auditioned for the class, and I got into the class and started studying with him and a great group of young actors. And about six or so months into studying at the class, we did a big um, showcase for agents and managers, and it just so happened that he had such great results with his students as a teacher that agents and managers would flock to his work, his showcases to look for new talent.
Mhm.
And I ended up signing right away with an agency called Abrams, Rubaloff and Lawrence. Started auditioning within several weeks of signing with them, and my first audition was for a Suzuki motorcycle commercial that was being casted by Paul Ventura, and I got the job. It was my first audition. It was a big. It was the Suzuki motorcycle commercial for the 1986 Super Bowl. So it was a really big commercial, a big deal. I had a lot of fun making it, and it wasn't too long after that. I mean, I did a number of other commercials. I did a guest spot on my good friend Ernie Reyes Jr. His old TV series that he was the star of called Sidekicks with Gil Gerard back in the day,
Oh,
and I was a
I
huge fan
remember
of
that.
Gil Gerard because yeah, I loved Buck Rogers growing up. It was one of
Yeah.
my favorite TV shows, and Gil Gerard, getting to work with him at that young of an age with Buck Rogers still really fresh in my memory. I thought I had made it, but then shortly after that, I got the my first feature film role in the movie Tucker. There was a Francis Ford Coppola film playing
Mhm.
the young son of Jeff Bridges, Noble Tucker, based on the true story of Preston Tucker, who invented a car back in the day that was ahead of its time, and he got
Mhm.
crushed by the big car companies. And so
Yeah.
once I did that film, I had landed in the realm of credibility, and so I was auditioning for bigger and better roles after that, and things just kept growing and developing for me. It was quite a um, I wouldn't say like a rocket ship to the moon type rise to fame and stardom, because I never really felt that I ever achieved any kind of real huge of fame or anything like that, and I never wanted to. So I don't really necessarily know how successful or how big of a deal I may have been during the Parker Lewis days, or not, because I just didn't pay attention to it. But after Parker Lewis, I just stopped engaging in kind of the red carpet atmosphere and all of uh, you know the marketing and branding of myself, because I didn't want to
Yeah.
become I didn't want to become a caricature of myself. So
And
I just sort of
I don't blame you.
became really private.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Let's be real here. Hollywood's messy. Hollywood is
Hmm.
messy, and she will absolutely destroy you from the inside out. So saving something for yourself is always a really
Yeah,
excellent
totally.
call. I loved Parker Lewis Can't Lose, but we gotta face the facts of but this channel. This channel is all about sci-fi and nerdy stuff. So the people
Yeah.
that watch me and listen to me, they know you as one person and one person only, and that person is Jonas Quinn from Stargate SG-1. And let me tell you something. When it came on, and it was 2002, you started as Jonas Quinn. Am I right? Yeah, I think so.
Um, I think we started production sometime around. I think it might have been 2000. I think 2002 is when I did the final episode for
Mhm.
season 5, possibly,
Mhm.
and then I think we started I don't know, sometime around there.
Well,
Yeah, so sometime around
when I
2002, 2003. Yeah.
when I first saw you as Jonas Quinn, I was like, "Oh, it's Parker Lewis." I go back, "Oh my god, it's Parker Lewis. He's on Stargate." For those who possibly wouldn't know, say you were explaining this to someone who has no clue about any of this. Who is Jonas Quinn, and who do you think would be drawn to that kind of character?
Well, I obviously, from a writer's standpoint, they needed to find some way of creating an original character that would, quote unquote, replace Daniel Jackson,
Mhm.
and the role that he played in there as sort of the guy who knew all about the ancient history and could read all of the different ancient languages, and the professor type of a character. And that was, for the writers, that was a very, very difficult character to create. And for me, I just needed to find find a likable, kind of innocent yet brave, character within the writing that would be palatable to people, that wouldn't be someone brash and would rub people the wrong way, or would be too imposing as as a personality. I needed to really just relax into it and find my place amongst the dynamic of the characters who'd already been there for so long. The writers did a really good job of allowing there to be some breathing room for the character to find his way into the SG-1 team. They didn't just shove him into the SG-1 team. He sort of had to prove himself not only to the cast members in the fictional world, but in doing so, the hope was is that the audience would follow along with that and be accepting to this new character. And I overall, I just have to say I was just so glad that I was that I got the opportunity to play that role. It was incredible for me. I've the convention circuit, I never really knew about the sci-fi conventions, and that whole world was really foreign to me. So the amount of travel I got to do, the amazing places that I've been because of that show, and the experiences that I've had, even up to this day. I still travel overseas a lot to go do
Mhm.
conventions and stuff for Stargate, as the primary reason for going, even though I have a following for other things that I've done. That's
Mhm.
kind of the primary still. And I have to say that the writers, again, they get the majority of the credit for you know balancing that character within the dynamics of all of the other characters on there. And I think they did a great job, and hopefully my character at the end of the day was memorable and likable enough to appeal to the majority of the fan base, because I know that there was such a heavy blowback when Daniel Jackson,
Mhm.
when Michael Shanks left the show. In reality, before my season even really aired, season 6 even really aired,
Mhm.
Sci-Fi Channel was already extremely nervous about the show not playing well for them, because they had invested a lot of money after it left Showtime and Sci-Fi Channel picked it up.
Yeah.
It was the most expensive show for them that obviously that they'd ever undertaken, and it was a really big risk for them. So behind the scenes, they were already trying to figure out if they could get the Daniel Jackson character back. Which was really unfortunate for me. I would have loved for them to have played it out a little bit longer,
Mhm.
but I had such a great time on that show, working with the cast and the crew and the producers and the directors. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, and I really got the job basically kind of on a fluke. I was at MGM, their corporate offices. They no longer had a studio, but I was at the corporate offices auditioning for something totally different,
Mhm.
not anything to do with Stargate. And I was outside in this kind of quad area, and the casting department for two of the members of the casting department for Stargate were
Mhm.
passing by, and I had auditioned for them for other things in the past, and we just started having a chat out in the quad area, and they had literally 3 days before had just gotten the notice that they were looking for a new recurring or possible recurring character for Stargate, and that's how the whole opportunity developed. I sent over my reel, and I had a good track record of being an actor who could do comedy, drama, and had some notoriety, which also helped. And I think RDA had the final say so on it, but basically they said yes, let's bring him on for that final episode of season 5 and see how he gels with everybody on the
Mhm.
cast. So it was that last episode of season 5. I was like really stressed out when I was working on it, to be honest, more stressed out than
Oh.
I'd been on any production that I'd ever done, because if that episode didn't go well for me, then they were probably weren't going to cast
Yeah,
me for
you're
season
right.
6. So it was, and then though I wasn't a huge fan of how my hair was done in that episode, and the wardrobe I had was like this really tight fitting sort of vest type thing that it
The
kept
high
my
kind of
body
mock
really
collar.
rigid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kept my body really rigid. I didn't have a lot of flexibility in it, so I didn't feel really as relaxed as I normally do. And so fortunately for me, it turned out well enough that they brought me on for season 6 and those episodes I did in 7, and I was absolutely blessed. To be able to be a part of that series. Besides that series, as far as sci-fi goes, the only other real sci-fi stuff I had done before that was a movie called Solar Crisis back in the late
Oh.
'80s. There was a really big sci-fi movie by Richard Sarafian, directed it.
Hmm.
His son Darren Sarafian wrote the screenplay for it, and it had an incredible cast. I mean, Jack Palance and Peter Boyle and
Oh,
Tim
yeah.
Matheson and other great actors, and that was a really huge sci-fi movie for the time. It was a 48-50 million dollar film, and it flopped in the U.S., but it did really well overseas. But it just didn't have the marketing money behind it for the U.S. And then after that, I did a sci-fi movie called The Life Force Experiment with Donald Sutherland.
Ooh.
That was real sci-fi, a real heavy, kind of more of a drama than anything else. But it
Hmm.
was, about them trying to, trap the intellectual spirit of my character in this machine type thing. It was quite a long time ago. I don't remember
Wow.
the details of it,
How
but
very
otherwise, I hadn't really done.
man.
Yeah, I hadn't really done a lot of sci-fi,
Well,
I mean,
you
obviously,
did
I'd done a lot of other work, but
you did the Stand miniseries, which is, I mean,
yeah, I'd call that more like
somewhat
thriller, horror, thriller
thriller,
kind
horror,
of,
fantasy,
yeah.
but listen, no one can do Harold Lauder like you. Like, you did an amazing job of playing such a little creep. I the kid who played him in the full series that came out a couple of years ago, he did good,
Yeah.
but I honestly I prefer your Harold. I just do.
Yeah, I would have liked, I would have, granted, I didn't see the redo of it.
Mhm.
Not for any particular reason. I just didn't see it. But
Mhm.
there was so many scenes and so much footage that never made it into the original, uh, you know, 6 hour miniseries that we did. I wish they would have just gone in and
Done the whole
revamped
thing.
the original and expanded it and put in all of the stuff that didn't, that wasn't included because of the length of time they wanted to keep it at 6 hours. But there was enough for an 8 hour miniseries. They could have, it was pretty expansive. Even some scenes that I was in that were cut out, and loads of scenes that all the other
Mhm.
characters were in. It was a massive teleplay. I can't remember how many pages it was, but it was like, I
Oh,
mean,
no. Oh my
it was
gosh.
like the thickest script I'd ever read in my life.
Man, kids these days just do not understand the power and the draw of the TV miniseries, the TV movie of the week, and that was something special that we got. We You looked forward to it all week long. We don't have that anymore. Now we have a million bajillion streaming services and YouTube where you could watch literally anything you want to watch whenever you want to watch it. It just kind of
Yeah,
takes something
totally.
out of it a little bit. Jonas, other than them, coming out and, having this conversation with you, I'm like, hey, by the way, we've got this role. We think you'd be good for it. What drew you to that Stargate role? Because I mean, you said it. That was a lot of pressure and some really big shoes to fill without, trying to fill them too much because you really couldn't replace Michael Shanks. He had that special
No,
place in the
impossible.
fandom's heart,
Yeah.
but how to kind of fill that void a bit. That was a lot of pressure. What drew you to that?
Well, number one, I was a huge fan of the original Stargate movie.
Oh, me too.
I remember being one of 10 people that were in the theater when that thing came out. For whatever reason, that it came out at the wrong time for
Yeah,
sci-fi, because I thought it was one of the best sci-fi movies that ever made. Next to
I
the
agree.
original Star Wars and whatnot. I was blown away, and I remember specifically being in the movie theater halfway through it and looking around and going, why is this place not jam packed? I could not figure it out for the life of me. It was just
It's
such an incredible film.
Interesting
And
concept.
yeah, and it's similar to Solar Crisis. It actually did huge numbers overseas. It was a
Mhm,
massive international success, and um, and a lot of that I believe is kind of what led up to Showtime probably picking it up as well. But when
mhm,
Showtime picked it up, they bought it for a full 5 seasons, so it wasn't like they had. I'm sure that they could have canceled if they wanted to at some point,
mhm.
but they had a 5 season pickup from the get go, which is unheard of, and what a great cast they put together for that. I mean, Richard Dean Anderson was the perfect pick for it, and I didn't have Showtime,
Mhm,
back then, when it was on. So all I remember of Stargate the series was all of the billboards and the bus panels and the advertising that would come out every year for the new season, and so I knew it was like a really big deal. Uh, but when I got the show, uh, the most I knew about it was the original movie, which was exciting enough for me. That was like
yeah,
I was sold already on being a part of the franchise, because of that. But then once I got the part and I was up there in Vancouver, basically living there, I got I was still watching VHSs back then, if you can believe it. But
so was I.
I yeah, so I had gotten copies of the entire 5 seasons of and watched them at my apartment I was living in, as well as in between scenes and stuff like that in my dressing room, and I watched the entire 5 seasons in like 3 weeks or something, for 3 or 4 weeks. I was just I watched because not just because I was really loving it. Once I started watching it, I was just blown
Mhm,
away by
yeah,
by the production value and the quality of the writing and the production design and the cinematography, the lighting, the wardrobe, everything was just it was on the same level as any big feature film that you
mhm,
could be on, and I was just blown away by it. There were no corners cut at all,
yeah,
and but I also needed to understand the world. I needed to really wrap my head around where did the story go from the original movie to where I was when I was entering into it, so I could understand as the character what it was I was reading in the scripts, and so it helped a lot to go and pick up all of those VHSs and watch them in as quickly as possible so I could get myself up to speed.
now did you blockbuster that, or did you just straight
No,
up
they had
buy the
copies up there.
series?
They had
Oh, well,
copies at
that was
the in
nice of
the in
them.
the production office and everything. They provided them to me. Yeah,
That's nice. My
yeah.
parents, our neighbor owned a video store, so we got stuff that way. They just gave them to
Was
us.
it called Mondo Video?
No. Ha! No. No, I'm in Missouri. It was not.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mondo Video was the video store
Yeah.
my parents owned in Parker Lewis.
Oh, that's look, to be fair, it's been like 30 years since I watched it.
I understand. There's a great new Instagram site, Synchronize This or something like that. I post
Mhm.
some on my Instagram at I am Corin Nemec, but it's all Parker Lewis clips, and it's pretty cool to see that coming out. And then there's actually a guy that lives outside of Atlanta who has a Mondo Video in his
No
basement, and he
way.
recreated, yeah, he
Shut
recreated the set
up.
from Parker Lewis, and he's got his whole VHS collection down in there, and it's called Mondo Video, and it's got all the lights. Why are those kind of lights slipping my mind?
'Cause we're
Um,
old.
yes, yes, yes. Don't rub it in. Come on up here,
Uh,
buddy. Come here.
but
My corgi's staring at me like he needs
I've
something
seen
desperately.
pictures of your corgi,
Come
and
here,
he's
buddy.
super cute.
Come
I have
here.
a Shih Tzu, and he has his own this is his seat in the studio. He has his own
That's
spot,
great. That's
but
wonderful.
he's
I love
he's
that.
such a he's so shoved up Dave's ass, though. Like, I'm secondary. I am incidental. Like, if dad's not around, then he will spend time with me. That's how that works. How would you say you are like Jonas? And in what ways would you say you're totally, totally different?
I'd say there's a lot more likenesses, for myself and the character of Jonas, in that I'm a very interested person. I
Mhm.
definitely am interested also in in theoretical physics, for instance. Even though I can't comprehend the mathematics behind it, I can
Mhm.
comprehend the theories and everything. And so I've been, I've over the years I've read a number of really great books. I've read all of Stephen Hawking's books, for instance, and Brian Greene, not the actor, Brian Greene, the theoretical physicist, his books,
Yeah.
couple other theoretical physicists. So I like that, and I'm very interested in ancient history and sort of alternative history as well. So
Mhm.
this idea of there being some kind of alien intervention in humankind and in human history over the years was not something that was difficult for me to wrap my head around, because I was already reading stuff along those lines, as it were. There's this guy, Bashar, who is a channeler, and he wrote a book called Blueprint for Change. That was a really interesting
Mhm.
book, and I saw him in person do a channeling session back in
Oh.
the early '90s, and I got to go to dinner with him after that was really cool. And some other like uh, When Men Were Gods was another book that I read that was all about alien intervention in human history, and a few other ones. They're still all on my bookshelf, but I haven't read them since the '90s. So it was something that I could totally get it. It was I was already ready for that, to play this character in many ways. Um, I think maybe the way that I'm a little different is probably not quite as I don't know, like soft spoken, or kind of like playing in the background, or I mean, maybe I am, but I would definitely just say that there's a lot more of me that I could relate to Park to Jonas Quinn than not. It wasn't
Mhm.
a hard role to embrace.
Now, if you could have gotten the opportunity to play someone else other than Jonas on Stargate, who would you have picked? Like if you they were like, "All right, you can play anyone you want."
Yeah, the character of Ra would have been pretty rad.
Ooh.
But I mean, they had a great actor who played Raw, but that
Mhm.
just the even from the original movie, that character was so dynamic, and such a in fact, in this series, I wish they would have used that they would have gotten more into Raw.
Mhm.
That that was a character that I definitely felt like I could have sunk my teeth into as an actor, for sure.
Would you say he was probably your favorite character from the series, Raw?
No, my favorite character, really, on set and off set, was Chris Judge, was Teal'c.
Oh, love him.
Offset, he was hilarious, and when he would like go from this jovial, real kind of goofy guy, to when they say action, to suddenly just immediately, into this very crisp, low voice, just monotone,
Mhm.
character of Teal. It was a lot of fun to watch, and he was a great actor to work with. He was very welcoming on and off set. He made me feel very comfortable. All the actors did, but Chris Judge in particular, and Don Davis, rest his soul.
Mm.
Don
Yeah,
S. Davis
General
was
Hammond.
was an incredible guy. We both were from I was from Arkansas. He was from Southern Missouri, but the Ozark, kind of that whole deep South vibe was. We got along really well. We had just culturally had just kind of some stuff in common, being from the same area, but also he was an incredible painter. He was an artist. Outside of being an actor, and so am I. I have other art forms that I
Mhm.
embrace. So we would hang out quite a bit. when there wasn't anything going on, I'd go over to his house, to his art studio, and we just hang out in his basement art studio and just talk about all kinds of cool stuff. And it
That's
was
surprising. I did
uh,
not know
yeah,
any
it
of
was
that
great.
about him. Totally forgot you're originally from Arkansas, that you're like our neighbor that we make fun of. So,
Yes, yes, yes. We are the Banana Republic of the United States, as we've been referred to at times.
what would you say is like your favorite line of dialogue from Jonas, if you could remember, like, or what was your favorite scene
I, you
for
know, that
Jonas?
my the favorite character attribute
Mhm.
that I enjoyed playing with, that unfortunately kind of got stripped away from me about halfway through the season, was the bringing food into it, and the eating, and the
Oh
and
yes.
the kind of
Uh-huh.
his fascination with this new world, because I determined, as when I was developing the character, when he's from a different planet that would have a totally different culinary,
Mhm.
system. They'd have different animals on their planet that they do or don't eat, different vegetables, different, it'd be a completely different world there. And sort of what I had mocked up in my head was that the food sucks on Langara, in Kelowna. Like, they don't have a lot of different choices to eat. A very basic kind of diet. And so, when he comes to the planet Earth, the first thing he's going to encounter is, sustenance. What do you
Right.
eat to stay alive?
Right.
And his relationship to, to food and to whatnot. And so, that to me was a lot of fun to play with. And there was enough episodes where I got to introduce some of that to the character, that it was enjoyable. But after a while, they said, "Look, if it's not in the script, you can't do it."
You're like,
So,
"Oh, but
like, what do you mean I
food."
can't be making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right now?
That's great. That's
But I think, well, the scene really was the banana in outer space. That became kind of
Mhm.
an iconic moment for Jonas. There was this scene with me and Teal'c in one of the episodes early
Mhm.
on, when Jonas was first kind of going off planet with them. And it was a long, I don't know how many pages it was. It had to be like almost a 6-page dialogue scene, and it's just us two sitting next to each other on this spaceship talking.
Mhm.
And I was like, gosh, I was just so concerned that it was going to be, you know not boring, because I don't want to say that for the writers or everything, but just a long, monotonous kind of a scene. So
Yeah.
I asked David DeLuise, who was directing that episode. I was actually standing over by the craft service table, which is where they have all the snacks and everything for the crew in between shooting. And there was this big fruit bowl there, and I was like, looking at this pile of bananas, and I was like, a banana in outer space. There's just, what is better than a banana in outer space? So I'm sitting there talking to him. I take a banana out of my vest. I'm
Mhm.
peeling the banana. I'm eating the banana. I'm not saying anything. It doesn't change the dialogue. It doesn't change the scene. I'm just talking, eating the banana and all that. And then when I get to the end, I silently kind of offer, a banana to Teal. I have a spare banana, and he just can look at me, and it's the reaction. So it doesn't change any dialogue. And so, fortunately, I pitched it to David DeLuise, who was directing that episode. And he was like,
Mhm.
a banana in outer space. I like it. And I was like, yes. So,
Oh man, the DeLuise family though, we wouldn't have sci-fi the way it is today if it wasn't for the DeLuise family. I firmly believe that. I mean, between Sequest DSV and Stargate SG-1,
totally.
they changed the game. So thank
Yeah.
you for the DeLuise family.
Yeah, and I actually I got to hang out with Dom DeLuise back in the '90s, in the
Shut
early '90s.
up.
I was hosting a night at um oh my gosh, why is his name slipping my mind? Here we go again. Here we go again. Oh,
I'm not saying it.
it's that from Caddyshack. Oh, what, did somebody step on a duck? Uh,
Oh, Rodney Dangerfield.
right, right. Yeah, I was
We were
hosting a night
just
at
talking about
Dangerfields.
that the other day, like literally, I think it was Christmas. We were talking about that scene exactly.
Oh, it's a great
Caddyshack.
scene. Yeah, so
Ah.
I was hosting a night of comedy at Dangerfields in New York.
Mhm.
And there's a private booth where the host sits along with Rodney Dangerfield and whoever else he has there as his guest for that night. And Dom DeLuise was his personal guest, hanging out with him that night. So I was sitting there with Rodney Dangerfield and Dom DeLuise. I'm like,
I
who could
have
ask for
arrived.
more?
I have arrived. How cool is
Yeah, it
that?
was great. It
Like,
was
that's an
great.
80s kid's dream right there.
Totally.
Since Stargate and everything, you've gone on to do many other things, but I was surprised to learn, and maybe if I paid more attention to you as a human being, other than the characters you play, but surprised to learn you are a graffiti artist and you're a writer. Like you just published another book, right?
Well, yeah, I have a couple of books that I've published. I published a bunch of my screenplays as well because I started writing screenplays in the in the early '90s, really, but none of them were worth reading when I first started writing them. But then I took some extension courses, like a UCLA, screenwriting extension course, and then a writer's you know a writer's boot camp that
Mhm.
with a bunch of really professional writers and stuff like that. And in order to understand how to write a script, a real screenplay,
And get
even though
that
I had read
distance.
tons of them, yeah, even though I had read
Mhm.
loads of them, I didn't really get that there was a kind of a format and that is used, especially by the studios, that
Mhm.
they kind of lean more towards certain scripts if they are in within this kind of format.
Yeah.
What happens in the opening scene, what happens in the first 6 to 8 pages, what happens by page 15, what happens by
Mhm.
page 22, all these kind of things that lead up to it, in order to keep this rhythm and this momentum going. Whether it's a drama, whether it's an action film, or anything else, this format, if you lace your story within it, you'll have these beats and moments that will trigger somebody to want to keep watching it.
Mhm.
So that was really great to learn. And I wrote a bunch of scripts. Some stuff I have one film that I wrote that's out now on Tubi called Deadly Justice
Mhm.
that I wrote and produced, and I'm acting in it as well. And another film that came out last year called Dead Man's Hand that I wrote with Brian Skiba, based on a graphic novel. It's a Western. It
Oh,
stars Stephen Dorff and Cole Hauser and Jack Kilmer. It's a fun
good
Western.
lineup.
And yeah, and I've written a number of Lifetime movies and stuff, and ghost written some films as well, that I'm probably not that happy with how they turned out. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to get paid, but I like to have the credit more than the paycheck, so
And
that kind of sucks.
it's a love-hate relationship with ghostwriting because you get paid to write what they tell you to write, and then once you turn it over, they can do whatever they want with it. They
Yeah,
can
yeah. They also
change
they also generally remove your name from it, so that's the other drag too. But
that too.
and created a series, a short-lived web series with David Faustino and some other partners that we wrote all the episodes for, and called Starving, that came out in 2008. And a lot of other stuff. I got some projects I'm working on right now that, as a writer, that I'm pretty excited about. So we'll see how all of that goes. But as far as the book stuff goes, yeah, I mean, I wrote kind of a novella that was loosely based on my years growing up as a teenager and as a graffiti artist in LA in the '80s. It doesn't take place in the '80s. It sort of is nebulous in the time period it takes place, but it's it was wild growing up in the '80s in LA. It was a crazy, crazy time period
I
then,
can't
with
even
the you
fathom.
know but I enjoyed it. I love graffiti art. I still paint. I do more murals now. At least I try to do more murals now. It's tough to get into the mural scene and be and get well paid for it.
Yeah.
But I've done some cool ones. I did one more recently for a local coffee shop here in Bel Air Bluffs, Florida, which is near
Mhm.
where I live, called Bel Air Coffee. And I did a really, really rad landscape, of a coffee
I saw
plantation and the
that.
coffee farmer and all that. Yeah, so that was really rad. And I did their logo stuff for them as well, which was something new for me. I hadn't really done that kind of style of sign painting before, so it was challenging. But I really enjoyed doing that too. So that's something that I still embrace. I still get into. But and then the writing thing, Venice High, that's the name of the book. It's on
Mhm.
lulu.com. If anybody's interested, it's lulu.com, and you can just literally Google Venice High and the book will pop up, because I published that one under my birth name, Joseph Charles Nemec the Fourth. So it doesn't pop up when if you're searching Corin Nemec and the other stuff that I've written that's out there. I got another book that I wrote based on the acting class that I studied for
Mhm.
most of the time during the 90s and early 2000s with my teacher Manu Tupo at the American Repertory Company. He had a technique called the New Era acting technique that was just it was a technique for living, not just a technique for acting, and it was just profound, so profound. It was almost kind of a Buddhistic approach to acting and creativity and stuff. It's very interesting. So I wrote a book called How to Create a Character for the Stage or Life, based on his technique, and that's published as well. And then I have some photo books out there somewhere that I put out too. I haven't been able to find them recently, uh, but I did journalistic style photography for a while. I did some stuff for the music industry. I did some photos of some musical artists in the late '80s, and I mean late '90s, early 2000s and stuff. That some of them got published. Some made album covers, and some were just in music magazines and stuff like that. Um, so that's it's art in general has always been something that I'm interested in. I got three books
Yes.
of poetry that I published that are all on there, that span the years from the early '90s, very late '80s, early '90s, all the way up until the early 2000s. I don't really write as much poetry anymore, but definitely, just the arts and entertainment business in general is just I'm into it. I love all
Yeah.
different forms of artistic expression. So it's
Kind of a
I've been blessed.
non-denominational artist.
Totally. Yeah.
Who does Corin Nemec want to be when he grows up? Like you're an
Well,
artist, you've done all these things. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't necessarily want to say that I want to grow up fully. The way that they've structured our reality, it sort of forces one to become more mechanistic about life and how we think and everything. So I've fought against that to probably my own detriment most of my life, in trying to kind of remain more in the aesthetic band than in the materialistic band, and because that's where I'm more comfortable. That's where I feel more sane, and centered. And but I don't know. I have a lot of interests that are probably outside the spectrum of the arts and entertainment. I mean, I do have some interest in politics, but we'll see if I choose to do anything in that direction, because that's such a different beast. But
Oh,
I've always had a very, very strong interest in sort of the alternative history of politics,
mhm,
and the unfolding of our modern times, and by what machinations behind the scenes have pushed us to where we are today, and are trying to push us towards this more kind of transhumanistic uh, uh, dystopian future, which I'm
I
totally
com
not in agreement with.
I completely
So
agree 100%.
yeah,
And the verbiage you used, beast, machination, unfolding, like those
yeah,
are just absolutely dead on. What we're dealing with right now. It's funny because they're trying to tell us that this is reality. This is what really happened, when we know for a fact you can literally fake anything. We know that you're up to
yeah, you can,
something.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
all
totally.
you're doing is showing us this hand so we don't see what this hand is actually
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. I
And
mean, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. There is a
mhm,
man behind the curtain. I mean, that's it.
absolutely.
It's
Absolutely. And I see, cuz we follow each other on Twitter, and I see the things that you do choose to post, and I'm like, like I completely agree with it. So that being said, your interest in politics, I would implore you to enter that ring. You have the right priorities, you have the right mindset, you you know what they're up to, you understand entertainment, which, let's face it, that's all politics is anymore. It's a
To a
poorly
certain
written
degree, yeah,
reality show.
unfortunately.
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely need someone like you to kind of clean this shit up a bit and just get everybody be normal for 5 seconds. Like, just be normal for five
Totally,
seconds.
totally. Yeah, I put a lot of thought into it, like anything. I mean, the impetus for me writing the book, How to Create a Character for the Stage or Life,
Hmm.
was not just because I wanted people to kind of get a load of what I got to learn from an incredible teacher, Manu Tupou. Because I studied with him for 15 years until he was not medically fit to teach anymore, unfortunately. But I got to soak up as much from this incredible artistic mind as I could, and it changed my life completely, for the better. I mean, just completely changed my whole perception of not only why I was. It got me back to the roots of why I started acting, but also gave me a
Hmm.
deeper understanding of what it is that I'm connected up with
Hmm.
as an actor from kind of a spiritual point of view. I won't get too in the weeds on it. It's all in the book, but also I wanted to also have a foundational text for potentially teaching acting at some point. That way, that the one thing that my teacher didn't have was a book. He had some
Yeah.
breakdowns of what it was he was teaching, but he
Hmm.
didn't have a full, like, at least a novella version of what it was we were learning. So we had to
Hmm.
kind of, it took years to catch up with where he was already at. Whereas if he had
Yeah.
written a book and we could have just read the book, we could have been like, "Oh, aha, oh, I get it," and it could have sped things up a bit for us in some respects. But the journey it's about the journey, not the destination. So,
Right. And
you
isn't that, a pretty good metaphor just for life, for parenting, for growing up? Like, our parents
yeah,
tell us these things and they advise us and school us in certain things. And it makes zero sense to us until we actually live through it and experience it for
yeah,
ourselves. That's how humans learn. That's how we grow,
yeah,
is just
100%. So in the same respect, I took, when I
Mhm.
when I was I met some people locally down here in Florida who had sort of said similar to what you said, because I wasn't necessarily trying to throw my hat in the ring in
Mhm.
politics because it's such a dirty business. But
Yeah.
I had a couple people close to me down here that sort of brought it up to me, and I was like, well, let me think about it, and just like I do with anything, I ended up, really meditating on, like, okay, well, then what would my purpose be, what would my agenda be, what would I how would I approach this, and so I spent months putting together an agenda. I mean, I have an agenda, like, that's very thick. I can tell you
Mhm.
that just offers possible solutions to some things, and locally, mostly, what could be done on a small scale that could be expanded to a national scale. But that's so I do have a platform that I could stand on going into it, and I have some meetings coming up this month, actually, with a few people to really take the temperature and see if it's something that is going to be worth it for me. Because if I do something like that, then I'm going to have to extricate myself completely from the acting world and from the arts and entertainment business for the most part, for the duration of that time period, and that's a big deal for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, interestingly enough, I have a lot of creative solutions that fill the gap there. That would be a lot of fun to see,
Well,
if
there you
they
go.
could actually be implemented. So we'll see what happens. But it's something that I'm taking the temperature on right now.
You seem very straightforward, very grounded, very normal, and we need that in the political scene. Like, we have so many politicians screaming in our face telling us what to do with our lives, and you seem more like me in that respect. Like, we shouldn't be telling you what to do at all with your life. It's your life. You need to choose how you live it, how you spend your money, and so on and so forth. We need more of that. Plain and simple.
Yes.
Plain
Yeah,
and simple.
that's right along the lines of the direction that I'd be going in as well. No doubt about it. Is and also just, we've lost the sense of, one of my one of my slogans. Somebody's going to steal it. One of my slogans is like, unity makes a community.
Mhm.
That's one of the concepts that have been toying around with, is how do we bring a community back together again and
Mhm.
get them actively participating in the outcome of things, rather than just watching on the TV or on their YouTube or on their social media,
Mhm.
everything going by them, flying by at light speed.
Yeah.
How do we get people so involved in it that they become an intrinsic part of that unfolding, and they're
Yes.
no longer watching it go by, they're a part of what's going by,
Yeah. Like,
so
how do you remind these people that despite all the labels you've been told or slapped on your forehead, the one you need to focus on, the one that is most important, is that we are all Americans. We're all
yes,
Americans.
100%. 100%. And that's, I guess right now that's probably the most sci-fi conversation we've had the entire time we've been on the but
Oh. Hey, science fiction
so
has been out to warn us and help us through all this for the last 200
totally.
years.
Totally, totally. I know we've come up on an hour so
Yeah.
far. This has been such an enjoyable conversation, and now that we broke the ice, when I have some more things to talk about, I'll reach out to you and let you know. Maybe we
Awesome.
can
I
do a
would
follow up down the
absolutely.
road here.
We could do a live stream sometime, have people ask some questions. It would be
Oh,
awesome.
that would be great.
Awesome.
Yes, I would love to do that. That would be
But
great.
thank you again for your time. Please thank Sabrina for allowing me to
I
borrow
will. She's the
you for
best.
an hour. She is. She's super awesome. Please tell her I said hi.
I will.
Um,
Sabrina, you're the best. She said, "Thank you, I know."
Ah. Well, until then, have a lovely evening. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You bet, and thank
All
you
right.
so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
That's all I have for you guys today. If you like the content that I'm putting out there, make sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. If you're new, I hope you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you get notified whenever I'm back with even more nerdy content. Until then, I've been Danny, he's been Corin Nemec, and you have been awesome. Make sure to check under your beds tonight because
Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are gonna get you!